she was so good at actually extending physical hospitality in her home and in her community, but also through writing. And so that was something that was really important to both Ned and I, that come through in this book, is that she's not going to be standing up behind a podium like telling you how to be a strong ally. She's going to be sitting around the table with you and some other friends, and it's going to feel like a discussion.
Welcome to the Habit Podcast, conversations with writers about writing. I'm Jonathan Rogers, your host. Leslie Bustard did a lot of thinking, teaching, and writing about what God made women to be, as distinct from what women can and can't do. She was working on a book on this topic when she died in 2023. In the last months of Leslie's earthly life, writer and editor Théa Rosenburg came alongside to help Leslie get the book over the finish line. As it happened, Théa had to finish the work without Leslie. She had to finish the work for Leslie. The book, called Strong Allies, released in 2026. I sat down with Théa at the Square Halo Conference in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and recorded the following conversation before a live audience. Théa Rosenburg, thank you so much for being on the Habit Podcast. I'm excited to have you here. I'm excited to talk about the new book that you helped bring into the world, Strong Allies, creating, cultivating, restoring.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
So we are live at the Square Halo Conference in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. The Square Halo Conference 2026. And this is an event that has Leslie Bustard's fingerprints all over it. Mm-hmm. And of course, you work with Leslie to bring strong allies into the world. So let's just start with you giving the short version of what this book is, why it's called Strong Allies, how it came to be in the world.
Yeah, so Strong Allies was something that Leslie Bustard was working on for decades before I even got to know her. She was really interested in the question of what are women made to be, not just what can women do or what's a woman's work. So she spent a lot of time studying and researching this question and striving to live it out in different ways until we met in 2019, and I got to work with her a little bit before her cancer diagnosis, and then for the next 3 years helped her with some different projects along the way until finally just before her death in 2023 she returned to this idea, and we started working a little bit more to pull this together from some notes that she'd had from a class she taught at her church, from some articles that she'd written, some recordings that she had. And then in the years since her death, I've just been working with her husband to help finish this up and get it out into the world. Yeah.
And so, tell me, it's called Strong Allies. Mm-hmm. Tell me about that. Why this book is called Strong Allies?
Yeah. So she spent a lot of time looking at Genesis 2:18, and the word in there that's often translated as helper or helpmeet is the Hebrew word azer. And it's not a word that occurs a lot throughout Scripture. Only one more time does it refer to women. The rest of the time it talks about God. So Psalm 121, where does my help come from? It comes from the Lord. And so from there she started digging deeper into, is helper really the best translation for that? It gets at an aspect of this work, but it doesn't necessarily convey the necessary nature of it, the vital nature of it. And so through a lot of study and talk with Ned, she landed on this term strong ally as being a better, more comprehensive way of conveying that idea.
So you're saying in, Genesis 2, when God makes an ezer for Adam, it often gets translated helper as if, junior varsity or something like that.
Right, like a sidekick.
Sidekick, yeah. And so the idea is, no, this is something much stronger.
She really needs her. She's something more than like an accessory.
Yeah. But also, as you said, more often in Scripture, that term is used to refer to what God does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something my pastor has said, that the true helper of the Bible is God himself. And so Leslie saw this as a way that women bear the image of God as being helpers, but it's so much more than just an optional sort of, sidekicky kind of way.
Yeah. And as you have already suggested, this is not strictly in terms of women's relationship to men.
Right.
But relationships to the wider world, and therefore not just as wives or
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was something that was really important to Leslie, is that this was not just in relation to men, but women can be strong allies for other women and encouraging one another. I know she was a strong ally for me, and also for our communities, our churches, our cities. There's all kinds of ways that we can live this out that aren't isolated only in marriage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love the way that this book is not just about allyship, but that in the way it got made, it modeled allyship. Right? I mean, the allyship between you and Leslie, and then all the contributors. I'd love to hear more about the process by which this book got put together.
So one of the last things that Leslie did before she went into the hospital for her final surgery was email a bunch of other women and ask them if they would be interested in submitting essays for this book that would illustrate different ways that they have lived this out, or we have everything from like fictional characters to artists throughout history, women from church history. There's a wide selection of examples that women chose to write about. But it gives the book itself this structure of a conversation between Leslie's main text and then all these other contributors. So each chapter is Leslie's writing, and then about 3 essays by other women illustrating what she's just been talking about. So there is this back and forth sort of allyship happening. Yeah.
And you said she sent that email out to other writers shortly before she went to the hospital. Was that the plan all along, or did she sort of realize she needed a little more input just to finish the thing?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think that was, as she was getting closer, realizing that it might be harder for her to finish the whole book herself.
Yeah.
That was when I think the essays came into play. So in that sense, it really was like a strong ally, necessary help. These women helped her finish the book.
Yeah.
And then during that time, she also asked me to put together sort of a rough draft for her based on her notes. So she had a lot of material she had written over the years, a lot of teaching she had done, but those things you couldn't just like directly translate that into a book. So I did some work at that same time helping kind of stitch that together into a working manuscript. And and then we got to kind of see how the essays wove into that as they started to come in. And,
Did you're listed as a co-author, not as editor? How was that? How would you describe how your role in that was? Well, not an editor so much as a co-author.
A lot of that was Ned. He insisted.
Okay.
And I think that gave me a lot of freedom and confidence. Like, he put a lot of trust in me with this project, and he was a huge support and advocate for Leslie. And I just, I can't underscore enough what an amazing job he's done of making sure that this gets out there. Not every husband who's just recently lost his wife would be willing to go back and read through all of this work and take this on and want it to be true to her voice and contribute in the way he has. So, but he also, in sort of insisting that I was a co-author rather than an editor buried on the title page somewhere, he gave me the freedom to be able to move things around in the way that they needed to be moved around so that they weren't repetitive, so they could build on each other. So it was a book that you felt like you could follow from start to finish, and that, hopefully does justice to her ideas. And so I think that was...
I think it's, as you said, remarkable that Ned was able to dig into this just, so quickly after his wife's death. Also, it's remarkable that he knew where to look. One thing you said, you talked about being true to Leslie's voice. Can you talk about how one does that? Right, you've got your voice.
Yeah.
And
we write very differently.
Yeah. So, how does one do that in that situation to put this together and do some of the writing, and it still be true to her voice?
Yeah. Well, this is the 4th book that I worked on with Leslie, so I had a pretty good bead on her style. Often as an editor, when I start working with a new author, I kind of start to recognize pretty quickly, like we all have our things, right? Like I could throw parentheses and em dashes into the middle of anything and just wander my way to the end of a sentence. Like I know that about myself, and I'm like, okay, I have to like rein that in a little bit. And like we all have those things, and so I was pretty familiar already with the words that Leslie tended to like lean towards, the ways that she would or wouldn't use punctuation. So some of that was already available to me. But I read a lot of her writing, and in working on this book, often had so many tabs open. Like I could go back to our emails and look at words and phrases, how she would have said something. It definitely felt like a work that was a lot bigger than I could do on my own, but it felt really, really important to, Ned gave me a lot of flexibility. Like he was not like, it must sound this way. Like that was part of putting my name on the cover too, was so there was some breathing room that if I slipped in there a little bit, it would feel harmonious and like it belonged. But there was definitely a lot of toggling back and forth between like the live working document and her notes and other essays and things that she had written before to kind of get that feel for what she would have said.
And didn't you mention to me at one point that you also read a lot of what she was reading?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was a big part of it too. Everything, I think just about everything that she cited in there, I wanted to have I didn't want to just pull quotes that she had quoted in her original class notes 6 years before or whatever, but I wanted to actually understand what it was that spoke to her about that quote, what the author had originally intended. So I did. I mean, it was, at one point I sent Ned a picture of the stack of books that I read for this book. And it literally, like one night, we had this little rolling cart that they were piled on top of, and they collapsed in the middle of the in the hallway, like filled our hallway with books. It was like a foot deep. We're like, oh man, that's a lot of books. So so there was a lot of reading too, just to try and kind of get into how she was thinking about things, what was influencing her, and kind of letting it influence me as well. Yeah,
I can't remember if we've already mentioned this since we started recording, but there was some of this started. Or it started to take shape. Really, you mentioned it was decades in the making, but a really watershed for this whole project was a Sunday school class that Leslie taught. Would you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. Well, so she was invited to do a Sunday school class at her church, talking about these ideas of women as azers. And I did not get to go to those classes because I didn't know her and I don't live here, but it's been really neat to hear both how much input she took in those classes. Like I've talked to several people who said, oh yeah, she sent me her notes and had me go through them with her and push back. Like she had friends that she knew would disagree with her, and she wanted to hear where she could strengthen her argument, but she also listened to them. And then also when I came to the Square Halo conference a few years back as well, and hearing from people, like I had read these notes. She kept very detailed notes. I had the whole notes from the class. I had her audio recording, so I got to listen to her do the class. And it was amazing to hear people quote, like I knew it was verbatim because I was so steeped in these notes. And like to hear them quote, like it was almost 10 years later probably, hear them quote these notes almost verbatim and say like that was so impactful for me, and to hear how it influenced her church culture as well.
Yes, in Square Halo world, collaboration is so important. It's interesting to think about even that Sunday school class, 7 or 8 years ago, was a collaboration as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Well, the word allyship is super important, obviously, in this book. But another way to think about some of what we've been talking about is hospitality, right? Which is also, again, super important in Square Halo world.
Yep.
Super important in the Bustard's life. Just in an earlier session today, some of the women who contributed, it was so obvious that Leslie was looking at this project as a way of being hospitable, making space for other people. Hospitality. Talk to me about hospitality and this project.
Yeah. Oh man, that is such a big question, because I feel like she just embodied it in so many different areas. And I think that like a lot of people probably know her best from like the poems and essays that she wrote. Like she really just started writing after she's diagnosed with cancer. And it wasn't just like I watched her writing change, right? I met her just before that. I worked with her on these early articles she had written based on some of these ideas. and then watched her just shift into this like beautiful, like poetic gear where she's just writing these poems that are so wonderful. And I think that her, like as a writer, she just opened up in this hospitable way. And I think she showed this really uncommon hospitality in inviting people into what she was going through with cancer. Like she kept a Caring Bridge journal that was incredible. Like the things that she shared, she was so vulnerable about so many different aspects of things, but always in this hope-filled way that honestly showed where she was wrestling. But then also she continued to have hope and joy through it, and she invited people into that. So I think that hospitality, she was so good at actually extending physical hospitality in her home and in her community, but also in this, like, through writing. And so that was something that was really important to both Ned and I, that come through in this book, is that she's not going to be standing up behind a podium, like telling you how to be a strong ally. She's going to be sitting around the table with you and some other friends, and it's going to feel like a discussion, like, you know, where you're able to ask questions like, no, but like, really, what does this look like? And then she could say, this is what it looks like, you know?
Yeah. Kevin Chandler, talks about the hospitality of need and offering hospitality not as I'm in a position of strength, security, and I'm going to offer that to you. That's not the only way to extend hospitality. Yeah. And when you talk about in Leslie's life, as her earthly life ebbed away, the way that she invited people into that, not a position of strength and security, but a position of weakness. Yeah. And the hospitality of need to say, I'm going to invite you in and also give you the chance to minister to me. Yeah. Even.
Well, she was an amazing example of that. And I just got to meet her in person once because I live so far away.
Wait, it was only once that you met?
Just once.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So we corresponded a ton, like text and all the things that we can do now, which is great. But just once I got to come back for a Square Halo conference, and I flew all the way across the country to stay with people I had never met in person before. And she, met me at the car door, hugged me, and led me into her house, sat me down at her kitchen table, and told me that her cancer had returned, and then took me out for dinner. And it was that was such an amazing example of hospitality that just had all of those things wrapped up in it, where it was she was I'm going to invite you into this. I'm not going to pretend like this isn't happening. Yeah. They had just found out 2 days before. Yeah. And so it was very much live. She had been, I don't know if she was fully in remission, but she had been doing much better. Yeah. And they had just gotten the news. But they still, brought me in and then took me out for dinner. It was great.
Well, and I love the thought of, on the one hand, creative work is an act of hospitality, inviting the reader, the viewer, the listener, the audience in, right? Making a space for them. But there's something about this collaborative process that it's very obvious that there's the function here of creating space for other artists or other people doing creative work. Yeah. And that generativity that comes from that kind of hospitality is really sweet to think about. Yeah.
Well, the hardest part about this collaboration, right, is that she doesn't get to be a part of it anymore. So I think that it's been a really interesting, it's just been so collaborative. It's obviously nothing I've ever gotten to be a part of before. And the way I feel even being at this conference right now and getting to connect with so many of the women that also got to write for it and getting to know them and hearing their stories, I'm we're going to be friends now because of Leslie. Yeah. And yet it was I definitely had days where I would, have to call Ned and be I need you to help, talk through something with me because I can't ask Leslie. I don't know how she would have thought about this. Help me figure it out, point me in a direction. Yeah. And there's definitely a now and not yetness to it all, where it's I'm so grateful I got to do this, and yet it doesn't feel like I should be the one talking to you right now, So yeah.
Well, I'm glad you're talking to me, nevertheless.
I'm really glad I'm talking to you too, don't get me wrong. But
all right, well, we've been talking so much about the process by which the book got written. I'd like to talk a little bit about what's inside the book. Yeah. And as you said, this is not just about what women can do, should do, not necessarily about doing, but what women are called to be. Mm-hmm. Having said that, I do want to talk a little bit about what women do, because I was really struck by something that I guess it was Lisa Smith, who's one of the contributors. Leslie mentions in the text that a conversation she had with Lisa about housework, and Lisa said something along the lines of, "It's just entropic, It's just you do the work, and then the work gets undone, and then you have to do it again, and then it gets undone, you have to do it again, and a woman's work is never done, except that neither is a man's." Right? I mean, that's what it means to be an adult, is to get used to the idea that most of the work you do is going to get undone, and you have to get up and do it again. And children say, "Why should I make my bed? It's just going to get unmade again." And an adult says, we just make our bed.
Yep.
And yes, it gets messed up, and then we do it again. And we fix a meal, and then we have to do it again. And that struggle against entropy, that, by the way, we need to be strong allies in doing that, because there's so much entropy. The chaos monster is coming, right? And creative work is all. Well, I started the sentence by saying creative work is a function of bringing order back to that.
Yeah.
Right? And so. Well, can we let's get on the subject briefly of housekeeping in Holland, because it's such a famously neat environment, right? The neat houses, and it's so orderly. You look at those 17th century paintings, and that is a world where the mud, they've got these dikes holding back the mud, right? And there's always the danger of the mud coming back, and that incredible neatness of these Dutch towns and villages. That's the context for that. It's really remarkable to think about, especially just how there's something very ennobling about the idea that's what we're talking about when we're talking about housework, but also all the other kinds of work.
Yeah.
I know none of that was a question, but I'd love to hear that. Maybe you could respond to these ideas.
Yeah. Well, I think, that is the struggle, right? Like, my house does not look like those houses in Holland. Like, the mud is,
the mud comes in.
It's encroaching for sure.
Yeah.
But I know that beauty was so important to Leslie, and it seemed to become increasingly so the farther along she got in her journey. She called it Cancerland, and her journey through Cancerland, right?
Yeah.
And she did a beautiful job of bringing beauty into some of these small tasks. And I know that she would not. One of the things that is really wonderful about this book is she's very clear in her stories. I had to get Ned's permission to include some of the ones she shared with her church, because it's really different to share a really vulnerable story in front of your church community versus I was like, do you think she'd be cool with taking this to any reader that buys this book now knows this about her? And he was like, yes. And then he gave me more details.
So there wasn't anything that got left out after you asked?
No, it was he's like, yeah, actually, let's get into that and flesh it out more,
Yeah.
And so she is not presented as a saint here. She talks very candidly about the struggle. She talks about dealing with the dirt, right? How dealing with the dirt is important. It is an important part of life. It matters in the sense of kind of bringing beauty and showing love to the people around you, through those little gestures of the bed. Laundry is the worst, right? Because you're doing laundry and you're wearing clothes and you're like, there's never a moment where all the clothes are clean, it's already being undone.
Yeah.
You can get all the dishes clean, because there are moments when you're not eating. Anyway, we'll go too far down that path. But the idea that it is always needing to be done, and yet it matters that we do it as an act of love and hospitality, right? It's nice to come home to a bed that's been made, and it's nice to have your bed, have someone care enough about you to make sure you have clean sheets on your bed. And
I love that idea of again creating space in which people who we're all in the grip of entropy, right? Things can always fall apart, and yet we make spaces of order, and
Yeah.
and again, we think of this as think of housekeeping as women's work, except that it's what we all
Right.
do. Hopefully, we're all making spaces and bringing order where there's disorder, and telling a little bit truer story than what the world is telling. That entropy isn't the entropy may be an unavoidable fact, but it's not the final fact.
Right.
It's
It
not the
doesn't win
truest
in the
thing.
end.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and one thing, this might be a little bit of a tangent, but one thing that she talks about it, I don't think it comes up in this book, but in her other book, the anthology of her works, Tiny Thoughts That I've Been Thinking, she talks about her and Ned's decision to collect original artwork. And I didn't totally get the goodness of that until I saw their house and I saw what that original artwork brought to it. And it was this little act of saying, like, this has value. Like, we're going to, because it is different when you see a print of something versus the original, and to see that they had this, this growing collection of these original artworks that spoke a lot about the kind of care and attention they put into creating a welcoming place where there are interesting things to look at. Like, it's almost hard to make eye contact with, like you're trying to talk to them, but you're like, what is that? Like, that's amazing,
Yeah. Well, and again, even that example, the choice to there's plenty of beautiful art that's not original. And
not everyone can afford original art.
Sure.
Like, it's,
Sure.
it's not a necessity, but it is a good. Yeah.
And so it's a way of making a space for the people who come to your house, but it's also a way of creating space for the artists who are making that work.
Yeah. I'm reading Theo of Golden on your recommendation right now, and it's all about that. So good.
Yeah. Excellent. I was so delighted to see that toward the end of it was almost the very end of the book, that Leslie brought up one of my favorite movies of all time, Babette's Feast.
Yeah.
And of course, that's a movie and a story, and then a movie about a woman who, she's a refugee of some kind from one of the various calamities in France. I can't remember which particular calamity she was running away from, and she's living with these very ascetic people who don't enjoy beauty, or who actively avoid beauty and deliciousness. Like, they have a very plain food, and she becomes their cook and has to learn how to cook for people who don't want things that are delicious.
Yeah, they don't want to enjoy the food.
They don't. They think it's a sin to enjoy the food. And I guess we learned relatively early in the movie that she was a chef. That she was a woman who knew how to make really beautiful and delicious food. And then she wins the lottery, and she creates this incredible meal for her for the villagers. I'd say they're not just villagers; they're like a little religious,
like a religious community. Yeah.
And with a lot of embittered religious people, and then in that moment of generosity, as she wins the lottery, she creates this beautiful feast for them, spreads a feast for these people who are not used to having a feast, and in that moment of grace and beauty and delight, people start to change. And she spent all of her lottery winnings on this one meal. It's such an incredible story of what art and beauty and self-sacrifice do in the lives of other people. Well, it just, I wondered the extent to which Leslie understood she was telling her own story in mentioning that.
There were a lot of moments like that one as I went back through. So I went back to her original emails from 2019 about this book, and the example that she gave in one of her, we were kind of brainstorming ideas for some articles she was going to write about this. And three of the main themes of the book are creating, cultivating, and restoring. And she was kind of trying to come up with examples for what that would look like. And so she talked about the secret garden, taking deep breaths. I'm like, don't just cry. It's a really amazing, really amazing moment. But she was giving the example of the secret garden and how there's the woman who creates the garden. She plants the garden, and then she dies and she can't take care of it anymore. And then Mary comes along with her friends and restores it, or cultivates it so that then it can have this restoring purpose in the lives of the other characters. And I sent that to Ned, and we both were just like, what the heck? Like, God does have a plan. Like, he knew. And there was just no way at that point that she could have had any idea that she was creating something that then she was going to entrust to others to cultivate. And that already has this restoring effect on people. Like, I've loved talking to people at the conference already. I've, loved hearing from people that have read the book, and just the way that, it's already giving people things to talk about and think about. And all of that is so beyond, what Leslie could have. I don't know. It comes to this like hard, terrible, sad thing. And yet God's already creating such beauty with it in just the way that Leslie was trying to create beauty, Yeah. And that's just another example. Like, there were a lot of moments like that I was like, this is uncanny.
What else you got?
Well, I can't think of it. I'll
that's cool.
Maybe circle back to that if I think of more. That was the big one that I was like, it's just...
That's really remarkable.
I could come across a quote. Well, I think even in the introduction, if you don't mind if I read from it really quick. There's a Eugene Peterson quote. She loved his book, Eat This Book. And he says, he describes John writing down what he hears from the angel in Revelation. So John started to write down what he was hearing, but then was told not to. A voice told John to take the book from the huge angel, this God messenger preaching from his world-straddling pulpit. And so he did. He walked up to the angel and said, "Give me the book." The angel gave it to him, but then said, "Here it is. Eat it. Eat this book. Don't just take notes on the sermon. Eat the book." And John did it. He put away his notebook and pencil. He picked up his knife and fork, and he ate the book. And I just remember thinking, like, I met Leslie when she was taking notes on the sermon, right? Like, she was studying these things. She wanted to, like, live in the right way. She wanted to please the Lord. And then he said, like, no, you need to eat the book. Like, I'm going to transform you in this completely different way. And that was cancer. And that's, so sad. And yet you could see, I feel like so many of us had the experience of watching her transform through her writings until at the very end, the epigraph for her other book was something that she had written to her daughters, where she said, like, I finally get it. Like, just trust in Jesus. Like, that's it. Just rest in him. And it was just this paring away of all the extra things that she felt like she needed to do until she could just rest in him and see it's just about him. And it's a totally different process than taking notes on a sermon, right? Like, it's it's probably not comfortable to eat a book, I would imagine. Not even like a heavenly one. So, yeah.
I love it. I think one thing, as I've reflected on the last year or two of Leslie's life, and as you've said, there's something about her writing that really began to take flight. There at the end. And I realize, and this is an illustration of something that I believe to be true, but I've never seen such a good example of it. And that is that what really makes writing is not finding the right words. It's not studying the right thing. It's living your life fully. And then there's something about fullness of life and abundance that makes its way into the work. And I think that's why. That's why Leslie's made such a big impact on so many of us.
Yeah, well, and I think that's part of why this book has the heft that it does, not just because it's a big book, but but because she lived it. And one of the decisions that we had to make early on was, so this is based on her earlier writing, so it's going to sound different from the things she was writing for the end of her life, and that's okay. but also, like, you know, it's a weird tension where we're like, we can't pretend to readers like she's still writing it currently, because that feels deceptive and weird, you know? So trying to figure out in terms of the voice, like at what moment is she writing this, if that makes sense. And yet, even as I was kind of putting this together and thinking like, okay, I get to talk about her experience with cancer in my introduction to the book. And then the rest of it is Leslie just writing as Leslie, as though none of that has happened yet, you know?
Yeah.
And yet, as I was working on it and as Ned was helping with it, it's like, but we were aware. Like, we could see ways that she had lived this out fully and could weave those in a way. It was an interesting line to walk, to try to keep that as, like, truthful as possible and let it be as hers as possible. Yeah. And yet know that there's this whole other chapter that, like, this book doesn't quite acknowledge, you know, like it's coming. I don't know. Does that make sense?
I think so.
It kind of feels beyond sense a little bit. It was a weird thing to kind of navigate and figure out. But the fact that she lived this out to the end, like she, even through her cancer, was being a strong ally to other people. I talked to someone last night that Leslie started a book club while she was going through cancer therapy, and that book club is still going. Wow. And things like that. It's like she continued to sow beauty and do the exact things that she talks about in this book through these really difficult trials that she went through. Yeah. So, yeah, it gives it definitely like this is not theoretical. Yeah. This is a very like embodied, lived out theology.
Yeah. Well, I know that was a lot to navigate. Thank you for navigating it. I think this is going to bear a lot of good fruit. Already is bearing good fruit. So thank you.
Well, I want to say my pleasure, but you know, I'm grateful. I'm grateful that I got to help him. So
yeah. Well, Théa Rosenburg, thank you so much for being here, and thank you all for your questions. And as I said before, I trust that this book is going to do a lot of good in the world. So thanks for your role, and thank you for being here. So.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
The Habit Podcast is brought to you by The Rabbit Room, where art nourishes community and community nourishes art. You can support their work, including this podcast, by becoming a member. Visit rabbitroom.com/membership. Special thanks as well to Taylor Leonard for letting us use her song Diamonds as the theme music for the Habit Podcast. You can learn more about Taylor and follow her work at taylorleonard.com. The Habit membership is a library of resources for writers by me, Jonathan Rogers. More importantly, The Habit is a hub of community where like-minded writers gather to discuss their work and give each other a little more courage. Find out more at thehabit.co.